They're really not that bad. So one of the things that you find out fairly quickly is that you're better off with a slightly wider gait when you're wearing crampons.
Right.
So instead of, I usually walk like this, I come out to about here. It's not a lot different. You don't have to do this.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit wider. It just beats the heck out of tripping over your own feet, which I do every season several times anyway. The other thing is, when you're walking, you've got to kind of recognize that when you have a straight leg with a shoe that doesn't have any points on it like this, and you step down, if your foot pivots a little bit or slides or sort of scooches on something, it's no big deal. But with a crampon on, if you come down and you come down on something that's, an odd shape or very firm or something, there's not any give.
Right.
So it comes right up your leg, and it's kind of hard on your knees. You can do some interesting things to your knees if you're not careful. I call them tweaks, but there's better medical terminology for them than that. Suffice it to say that instead of coming down onto a straight locked leg, you're better off always keeping just a little flexion in your knee and kind of walking like you're sort of almost in a semi-sitting position. Yeah, and you kind of walk like this. And if you do that, you never end up with that spring problem. So it's just a little bit sunken down.
You're right. It feels a lot more secure there, RL.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
Just,
whole,
yeah.
you get to kind of move, kind of let your body kind of really. A couple of the other things that are really of concern with crampons. When you're walking on anything except snow and ice, if you step on a log, for example, it's quite a different experience. I'll step on this piece of wood here. Sometimes your crampon will actually penetrate, and it may not come out instantly. I mean, it's not like you're going to get stuck in there, but if you're expecting to be able to just keep your walk, keep your stride going, and your foot stops, it has some interesting kind of effect, like, on your head. You don't realize why. So you kind of got to always be ready anytime you're in anything except for pure snow or ice that you're walking on. You got to be ready for the unexpected. You step on a rock or something, and your crampon doesn't quite react the way you would expect. Unlike a rubber-soled shoe, it's a big difference. So keep that in mind, and you just kind of take it. You take it tentatively, I guess, is the best way to think about it. Walk 2 or 3 miles in crampons, and you know everything in the world that you need to know for the rest of your life. But we don't have 2 or 3 miles right now. So let's walk a little bit more, and we'll talk about French technique.
About what?
About French technique.
Okay.
That's the France again. Okay. Well, a long, long time ago, the French worked out how crampons could be used in the absence of front points. Because we now have these beautiful mono points on these crampons, we don't need to use all the French techniques. But the truth is, an awful lot of what we do is not happening on vertical ice. Most of what you do during a day of ice climbing is walking to and from, walking at the top of the climb. Maybe you're standing on a ledge, and the rest of the time you're climbing and it's different. But getting around, just kind of perambulating about, is a lot of what happens. So you want to be good at that. French technique begins with what's described as pied de marche, or feet walking. Okay? You just did it. It doesn't take any skill to do it. You just got to be a little careful. Keep a slightly flexed knee, keep your feet apart, and be ready for things to happen that are unexpected. As the terrain gets steeper, French technique allows you to travel on that terrain with relatively minimal amounts of strain. There are other ways. There's pretty much most situations have a wide variety of ways that you can solve them with crampons on. But as a hill gets steeper, and I'm afraid we have virtually no good. I can use that over there. Let's go over there. Quite as much of the slope as I'd like, but it'll suffice for the moment. Walking up something like this with your feet like this, you can do this.
Yeah.
But it's easier if you walk with your feet apart, like so. Okay?
Like in a V?
Yeah. Feet like it's a duck walk, feet like a duck. And it's actually called pied en canard, which is feet like a duck. So what that does is it allows you to get all of the crampon points on the bottom of your crampon engaged in the surface without bending into too bizarre of a position. As it gets steeper than this, let me do it over here. It gets to a certain point, like if I try to go straight up here,
Yeah.
it's going to be pretty darn awkward because I just don't have that much flexion in my calves and my boots and everything. So if I don't use this method, it's going to get pretty tricky. Now, an alternative to that would be to do this. And for 2 steps, that's fine. So I rose up onto my front points and I used those to navigate this little tiny hill. That's all fine and dandy. But use those front points for a 2,000-foot snowfield and the results are going to be pretty different. Like you're basically not going to be able to walk the next day because your calves are going to be this big. So what you have to do is